Okay, I call this meeting of the Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Wednesday, March 26th. It is 2:30 on the button. Um, our first order of business is on a potential property purchase, which we traditionally do in closed session for obvious reasons. Can I have a motion to go into closed session? Second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Yeah, do you mind? Probably, I would say 20 minutes. Bill will go up. Bill has a special bell that he rings. Oh, gotcha. Did you see that machine they had that was spitting the wood chips?
Oh, they have like a
The thing's got to be. Yeah, I've only seen it one day. It was one of those I'd love to go up and see it.
I lived in Reading for a couple of years and worked for a big tree company.
Yeah.
We had the 30-inch and 24-inch whole tree moved around, it was like on tracks. And then fellow bunchers and everything. I did all the Mayor Parkway, Union Parkway.
Yeah.
Bunch of 95.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Did a bunch of, did 300 homes, multi-homes down in right off of 84. Just the next exit up from Newtown.
Right. Hello, everybody. We had a closed session before this. Can I have a motion to seal the minutes? Is there discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Item 2, budget discussions on FY 2026 budget. I guess Amy Land has decided to flee from the building. Paul, chase Amy down. Great. Hi, Mona. Welcome, welcome. We start with the library. Bob, how are you? Good. It's good to see you. And congratulations again. I think all 5 of us have said it on the recent award from the state of Rhode Island. It's fabulous stuff. Congratulations. We just invited Bob up. I don't know if you want to say anything before that or if you'll. Okay, great.
How many town employees does it take to turn on a microphone? Yes, thank you. Very nice to see you all again.
Good to see you too.
Where would you like to start?
Just a brief narrative, I think, would be great, and then perhaps people have questions.
All right. You can't? How's that? How's that?
It has only taken me 5 years to understand that proximity matters.
My pleasure. All right. Let's see. Well, overall, we've got a 3% increase, which I think is pretty much in line with the rate of inflation for the next few years. So we're not overstepping our bounds. Most of the increase, I think, as you'll see, is the result of a year's worth of experience budgeting for the library.
Sure.
Places where you'll see some increases, we're advocating, or rather, I'm advocating for a assistant director's position, and I think the reason for that is, if not self-evident, probably not too hard to understand, given the challenges of trying to recruit and hire staff
Sure.
on Block Island. This is a manner in which I think we can ensure that there is a steady line of progression, that we have people in the pipeline, if you will, to assume the responsibilities of director once my tenure comes to an end. There would be somebody ready to fill that role, and there'd be someone in there'd be somebody in the assistant director's position to essentially give us a pretty unbroken lineage.
Sure.
So that's a big one. The other places that you probably see some changes would be in technology. We are proposing to embrace the company that currently is responsible for the IT maintenance for the town, which would be a change. Other likely changes would be in buildings and equipment maintenance. These are all places historically where we've had, I guess we should come to expect the unexpected. I'm sure you're all aware that there have been any number of challenges that have
Mhm.
arisen around the physical plant. Either they do with the HVAC or they have to do with some other esoteric piece of equipment that we're not, we're just not trained to take care of in-house.
Right.
So,
Can I ask you a question about your narrative, the budget narrative that we have what, could you give us some detail on the minimum standards for Rhode Island public libraries? It's not an insubstantial amount of money, and I'm just curious about what the changes are that they're requiring.
well, there are several. One that is probably is not clarified in the document. First of all, there are a minimum number of hours that a library in our population range is supposed to be open. We don't yet meet the minimum standard. Minimum standard is 35 hours, and we are currently at 34. So somewhere in there, we would have to make an adjustment. Amongst other things, there are minimum requirements for professional staff in terms of their training and the degrees that they hold. Some that we currently don't require a master's in library and information studies for would require that in the future. So that
When
is,
does that kick in? Because I assume that'll have a budgetary impact when you have to switch to master's prepared librarian.
it will.
Yeah.
It will have an impact. Minimum requirements would also have an impact on our planning because we are now required to do a regular update on our strategic planning. There are other things of that nature. They're in the realm of unfunded mandates, I
Yeah.
guess is the best way of putting it.
Sure.
It's left to the individual institution to figure out how they're going to meet those requirements, which for some small libraries, even smaller than Island Free Library, is going to be pretty problematic.
I would think. Thank you.
I beg your pardon?
I said thank you.
Oh,
Wait,
Uh,
so am I following along correctly? Because you need to have, you need to have staff that's master's level,
in some cases, yes.
but you have quite a few on staff.
We have some who have the master's degree, but we also have a number of very capable people who do not. And in order for them to continue to climb the ladder, the employment ladder at the library, they would have to find the time and the requisite funding to achieve those degrees.
Is there a reasonably sort of commutable place where you can get an MLS?
Yeah, one of the nice things that's changed since I got
Not
mine,
this year budget issue. I'm just curious about
Yeah.
what's coming.
now you can do it pretty much online.
Ah,
There are very few on-site requirements for an
Mhm.
MLS, and the University of Rhode Island is the logical place, although there are other options available too.
interesting.
Yeah.
How much does an MLS degree cost if you're doing it that way?
It could be, depending on the institution, mind you.
Yeah.
It could be 5, 10, 15,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a quick question for you. On the equipment maintenance. I think it's going to from, what's it, 4,500 to 10,000?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that cover, please?
That covers it well. That reflects the increases we didn't budget for this year. In effect, we had $4,500. Equipment began to break down. For example, most of that overage that you see is directly related to trying to keep our current elevator in operating condition.
So this equipment maintenance, you're saying this is going towards the elevator?
No, not in the future. What I'm trying to do is looking at the budget in the past. Each year, we've been short when it came to equipment maintenance. We didn't anticipate how much we were going to have to spend. So looking at those figures, I've tried to put in a reasonable amount to cover any contingencies that could occur.
Okay. But you said the elevator was the main cost for going over?
The elevator maintenance, trying to keep that elevator, the current elevator operating is one of the reasons that we exceeded what we thought was a reasonable budget figure for 24, 25.
And the elevators in this budget to be, I think, replaced or?
Yes, it is.
So hopefully that won't be one that will go over. So can you give me an example of some of the things that the $10,000 is going
Well-
to spend on if that's taken off the plate?
The HVAC system is a chronic money pit. And we know that even in a good year, some of the changes that we would like to make are still going to have to be absorbed someplace. So there would be equipment maintenance there. There's some equipment maintenance that doesn't, like our printer, like some of our printers and things of that sort that are due to be replaced. That would be another equipment expense.
Okay, but this is equipment maintenance, not equipment expense. So that's fine. I just expect you to have some type of a breakdown into what the majority of it is going to, as opposed to just a pool of funds if something comes up. But it doesn't sound like you have that. It's more like, it's.
Well, it's,
Bill,
I,
can I jump in? So the primary use, as we've talked about, of equipment maintenance has been elevator maintenance. That's going to include a future service contract for which we don't yet have pricing. We expect it to be higher than the previous very weak elevator maintenance contract. So there's a little bit of extra capacity there. If that line ends up being higher, there are plenty of other areas like HVAC related equipment where we're probably under budget a little bit. A lot of that HVAC systems is in building maintenance. And so I'm not concerned about the library's ability to have expenses to support those funds if in fact we do have additional capacity in the equipment maintenance line, because that ultimate elevator contract is under $10,000.
Thank you.
Great. Any other, go ahead.
I was
Amy.
just going to say, I don't think we fully addressed the elevator question, which is what is happening. And so it has been ordered and is on track for replacement in fall of this year, 2025. There is partial funding in the capital for that. The library trustees have also contributed to that project. And the narrative is actually incorrect. There's a funding request to Champlin, not Rhode Island Foundation, that we're waiting to hear back on. So obviously there would be a gap there that we'd need to address if that grant didn't come through. But Bob, I think so far you're hearing favorable things.
Are we locked in with that price, Amy? Because,
Yes.
good.
Is it May?
May.
All right. Any other questions for Bob? David?
David Lewis, very simply, is there a narrative from Bob that didn't make it into the court case pack? You seem to be reading, you asked a question about,
It's the budget narrative that was on clerk base. You have it in your right hand. Yes.
I didn't recall hearing anything about future staffing needs at the Master of Library Science
So
level.
that came because there's a budget increase for compliance with the new state requirements. So I asked Bob what the details on the new state requirements, and there are a number of them, one of them being overtime, having to move more towards MLS prepared librarians.
Mhm. So that was information that was only, that you picked up from the outside media.
Yes, that I picked up from that.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Bob, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Chris, how do you want to do the school? That was pretty funny.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to review the school budget for the upcoming fiscal year. School committee began the budget process early in January after a series of open meetings. Finally adopted the budget in February of 2010 with a requested 4% increase in the appropriation from the town. This amounts to an increase of $228,286. In the town's budget, the recommendation is an increase of $198,761 or 3.5%. We understand the town has been very supportive of the school and recognize there are many other priorities in the town. We are thankful for your continued support this year and will work within this year's appropriation moving forward. I would like to point out some of the significant areas of our budget and also talk with you about some opportunities of things that are coming both this year and next year at the school. Significant impacts for this year's budget. Approximately 85% of our annual budget consists of salaries and benefits for all school employees. This year, we settled a new teacher's contract for this year and also the next 2 years. Also settled this year was a new contract for the town employees. Each of those contract years are updated and are accounted for in next year's budget. New Shoreham is currently not receiving any Title I funding. The reason for that is we do not meet the minimum requirements of students that are considered below the poverty line, which would be 10 students or 2% of our student population. Additionally, the lack of Title I funding disqualifies us for Title IV funding on subsequent years, which will take effect this year. And this will also decrease our IDA funding, grant funding going forward.
Will you just translate that for?
Sure, I have the breakout for that. Title IV, the title funding, there's Title II, III, IV, and special ed funding. Title II funding, we get approximately $3,000. That's used for teacher mentoring. Title III, we get approximately $1,600. That's used for MLL student supplies and support. Title IV is for student enrichment, and we use that to fund, it's $10,000 currently. We use that to fund our, wait a minute, I know this. Our internship coordinator, getting internships for seniors throughout the island. And IDA costs.
Are those federal?
I'm sorry?
Those are all federal?
They're all federal grants, yes, sir.
And the implication of doing away with the Federal Department of Education, I'm just, you don't have any, I'm not putting you on the spot
Sure.
about that. I'm just curious about whether there's anything on the sort of superintendent coconut telegraph about what all this stuff means.
Well, from the Coconut Telegraph,
Yeah.
what I've heard is that it's not supposed to hurt the student loans or the federal grants. May be diminished, but they're not supposed to go away.
Gotcha.
But as all of us, I hear every day.
Yeah.
Something different. Let me see. Transportation costs for next year have increased due to a proposed larger number of sporting games off island. We're now part of the Rhode Island Interscholastic League. And we also have the additional cost of ferry tickets. Since our original adopted budget, we received finalized rates for health and dental premiums. The new rates will increase our submitted budget by $3,549. This information will be presented to the school committee and we'll work together to adjust the budget while maintaining the level of services to students that's expected at the Block Island School. As far as for other things going on at the school, we recently submitted a stage one application to RIDE for school construction. This is a multi-year process. Stage one is an overall needs assessment for school construction and renovation. The next step is a series of open forums for staff, students, and community. We had the first staff forum yesterday, and next Tuesday from 5:30 to 7 is the first community forum in our gym, followed by April 2nd. There'll be the first series of student forums. There'll be a second round probably in late May, for Memorial Day, but late May. We look forward to including the community in any new planning facility that addresses the needs of the students, the staff, and the community. The gym envelope, which I'm sure you've seen, is well underway. It was started last year, expected to be completed on or before this coming August. And this year, we've also been working on the basement area of the original school building to mitigate some of the ongoing air quality and moisture issues. The work started in December and is scheduled to be completed by the end of April. Once completed, this will allow staff to maintain any issues until a permanent solution is available. All costs associated with the basement work are from the school's current fund balance. The IDA number that we currently have, too, going back to special education, is currently at $81,000. 29% of that funds the special ed director's salary. It also allows hours for a school psychologist, required PD, seminars, and a preschool coordinator. And currently, there's a surplus in that line.
What's that line again?
IDEA,
I hear you, sorry.
Individual
IDEA.
Disabilities Act.
Wait, did you say preschool coordinator?
Preschool coordinator, yes, it's a minimum number of hours to transition students from preschool into the Block Island School.
What's the line item on that? How much does that cost you? Just curious.
Have the exact number, hang on. I don't have that broken out.
That's
Do you, Melanie,
that's
get that
totally
broken?
fine. It was,
The preschool coordinator. $2,400.
thank you. Any- Go ahead, Nancy. Sure.
The information that they're getting, I've understood that the IDEA number is the big chunk across the country that's been.
Yes. I have not. No, I have not. I'm waiting to hear officially. I mean, I hear things all the time, but till officially something happens, I don't have any idea.
I know from a couple of your meetings, there's a couple of buses, I think you're in the process of.
Yes, sir.
going to be Put out to bid.
Yes, sir.
With those funds, would those be able to be put back into, the contingency? Or how does that work?
So the large diesel bus we've worked out an arrangement with Narragansett. They will actually take it to their lot and bid it through a system for used buses. And Narragansett in and of itself is interested in the 14-passenger bus. I'm waiting for their representative to come over. He's scheduled twice, but weather prohibited him from coming.
That will
So-
go to bid though, I assume.
I'm sorry?
That will go to bid, I assume.
They do the bidding on their end. So they'll take it from here and then they'll bid the sale.
For both buses.
Yes,
Okay, so I mean.
But they're
you have
gonna-
an interest, But they would be bidding on it, correct?
they'll be bidding on the smaller one they want.
Right. So, but with those funds, can those funds roll back into this? Yeah, okay, good.
Any other questions?
No, but I want to say that I'm really disappointed that you're leaving and really
Yeah.
appreciate all the great work you did this time and last time you were here. So I
Thank you.
hope there's going to be a next time and
Yeah.
thank you.
Third time's the charm.
I intended to stay longer, but my body's not having it.
Yeah.
But thank
Well,
you
we
very
really
much.
Do appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Cindy. We'd love to hear from you. Amy, do you want to kick off department review?
Sure. I think I'm going to turn it over to Mona, but she's going to
Good.
begin with administration.
Of course, yes.
Please tell me if I'm not speaking loud enough.
Thanks, guys.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Mona.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great.
So I'll start with administration, but first I just wanted to mention some kind of across the board notes. In this budget, you're going to see wage increases that are, bulk of them are contractual, based on the NSEA union agreement and the police union agreement. NSEA recently did an adjustment to the classifications, and this is year 2 of that implementation. So that's what you're going to see in each department. And just a reminder that along with that, that's going to have related increases to the payroll taxes and the benefits. As far as non-union positions, just for budgetary purposes, we've put in a 3% increase on current, whatever the current wage was. And that's just to complete the budget. It's not necessarily put in, set in place, not finalized.
That's a placeholder amount. Gotcha.
Sure, yeah.
So Mona, I have one quick question, or Amy, on the wages for the union employees. I know there was the, I know they, it had been settled, you had used the, whatever the, what was that? The study that had been done.
Yes.
Right. And then, has the union accepted, and those are going to be in place? Because I know there was a time when the union hadn't accepted the plan where it was. So these wages in here, they're agreed upon from the union side.
These wages as presented are agreed upon by both parties. They are at this point independent of the original study as it was delivered.
Sure.
That was a basis for the negotiations that everyone has signed off on.
So these numbers will reflect in here what the contract has.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And follow-up question, so the non-union employees 3%, how does that match up with the?
In aggregate or in average. Because again, there was a job reclassification. So throughout the document, I think it is important for people to realize that you're going to see a variety of increases in any individual wage line. But in aggregate for the second year, there was a step and scale adjustment that totaled 4.5% for that NSEA contract. So you were asking for the comparison to the 3%, which again is a placeholder for contracts that will come before the council. But 4.5 is the closest apples to apples that we can give you.
An additional across the board change that you'll see within each department is we merged the travel and training lines. We're just finding that a majority of the travel is related to training, and it just made more sense to combine those. See those in each department. Let's see. Okay, so on to administration. That's going to be page 5 of the narrative and page 8 and 9 of the budget document. So one of the changes you'll see here, we have the human resources consultant. That's not necessarily a change, but it is a position that has been included in the budget for the last 3 years. And so this particular line is to engage an experienced consultant to help us strengthen our human resources, I guess, processes or and really just help us to establish some standardized procedures, streamline a lot of our, HR tasks that are currently kind of distributed amongst the departments. Let's see. Another large increase you'll see is the insurance, and that's just driven by the market. And that's the property and liability insurance mainly that has increased. And you'll see that reflected in the year-to-date.
Do we do workers' comp through the trust?
Yes.
Mhm.
And then we've got our deer management program. Prior years that had been supplemented by donations. And we used this number of the 35,400 just based on the demand we saw in the current fiscal year.
So on a question on that, was we were supplemented last year with is the 35,400 included with the supplement?
That is
Yeah.
the full expense, and it's actually almost identical, 24 and 25, 35,400 was the full amount of expense, regardless of where the funding came from.
And do we anticipate any supplement funding again through Byra or anybody else?
We did get some individual donations in the current year
Yep.
to bring us up to that full funded amount. I don't know that the hunters have received those checks yet because the donations just came in. But that again would close the funding gap for this year. So the recommendation is for the town to step in and fully fund the need. That's what's reflected in that 35.4. The hope then is that if the hunters continue to be even more productive, we can still go back and try to close that gap with donations if we needed to.
Because I mean, I support the 35,000. My question is if we can still get any additional funding, if there's a possibility, they may exceed that or whatever it might be.
I
It'd be
think
nice if
that's
we could.
the way it's set up, so that if they do exceed it, great, and we can turn around and ask.
So I love that. But my question is like the hunters, will they be fully paid by the end of this season? Is
That's my understanding, that we
Okay.
have received donations that will fill all of the demand that has been submitted. Now, if people are running around out there with things that haven't been submitted, that's beyond what we can anticipate. But for everything that's been submitted, we believe we do have full funding.
great. Thank you.
So I just touched on the points that were highlighted in the narrative, and I'm just going to highlight a couple more that are in the budget document.
Great.
Let's see here. As far as insurance goes, that's under the category of legal. I'm sorry, not insurance, but our consultants, our legal consultants. You'll see we've reduced the litigation side by 10,000. It's just kind of based on the historic averages and projected numbers, and then increased on the solicitor side, which is more contractual and retainers.
Has the numbers in the contract changed? Is that what it's based on, the increase?
No, it's really looking at the historic figures and then just some projections for the year-end numbers.
There's a little bit of an anticipation if you look at the actual for fiscal year 24 at the 295,000, and then some of the year to date for the current year, that we have moved through a majority of those housing and zoning amendments. And so we may see, the hope is that we see a little bit of relief. And so we have not increased the budget to meet those historical numbers.
I don't think that was cheap.
It was not.
Yeah.
Amy,
Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask one question. You and I spoke about this earlier today, and I'm still not 100% sure why it's laid out this way on the town clerk. You had said you had used 3% to do the increase, but the 3% is based off of the interim, the interim setup that we have right here, which I have no objection to, but in which is a temporary position as it's been presented. So as of July 1, the town clerk salary would go back to what the town clerks were. And I think you had mentioned that, there was some additional funding from the finance that was going to be needed, and why that funding wouldn't be applied to the finance as opposed to the clerk position, because it gives a perception that that's the clerk's position salary on that.
So the holistic answer or response today is that we are still in an interim period. And I don't have enough visibility to tell you exactly what the staffing program is going to look like throughout the next fiscal year. So as we are working through understanding what that landscape is, the most straightforward presentation was to take today's status quo and present that, expecting that there are going to be shifts in that staffing level and then the funding that goes with it. But I didn't want to start to predict this piece, but not that piece, and start sort of moving around small components without presenting a big picture. And so the best big picture I can give you today is the current status quo. I do expect there are changes, but I can't tell you exactly what those are going to be because we still have needs to be met. So as we continue to have those conversations, there will be budgetary impacts and there will likely be a disconnect at the end of the day between the adopted fiscal year 26 budget and what reality looks like at June 30th, 26. And we just have to work through that process together. There may also be additional clarity between now and when we get to financial town meeting and we work through the budget as well. And so to the extent that we have more information, we can make informed adjustments.
And so my objection isn't to the number itself. It's just how it places in there. I think it gives a perception that that's a number for what percent is going to go on. So we'll see how it evolves.
Yep.
And just two other points in this department. Under other general administration, we see a reduction in the housing line, and that housing line was held for a contractual housing stipend that's no longer active. So we felt comfortable removing that. And as far as we reduced the telephone line by 20,000, and that is based on with the strong internet that we have now with the broadband, we were able to move to a VoIP system, a voice operated
Voice over
voice-
internet protocol.
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment and acknowledge Tom, who for most of that work, and to be able to see those savings on the page is pretty awesome. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And yes, that's it. So that was a 5.9% overall increase from the prior year's budget. Any questions on this department?
Anybody, any questions? No?
Oh, I did.
Go.
Code updates. Under town clerk, is that our municipal code?
Yes. Hold on, I can't find the line, but yes.
5407.
It's for the recodification of the municipal code.
Oh, is that something, is that one, do we have to do that every 10 years or something? Or is that just we've chosen to?
We're doing that annually so that we can keep up with the vast changes that happen. If they're happening, so it happens on an electronic basis. They're on our, so we have a site that hosts it's municipal code, but they have a site now that hosts our code. And they bring it up to codification once a year.
Okay.
It's a terrific service.
We'll move on to the next department, finance. That's going to be page 6 of the narrative, page 10 of the budget. Don't feel like we have large changes here. To note would be the revaluation, the statistical reval that will be occurring in fiscal year 26. That's at the cost of 59,000 contractual. And that will be offset by state aid, and you'll find that over in the revenue side. I believe it's $25,000 that we expect to receive from the state to offset that cost. Other than that, let's see.
Do you have to go out to bid for that, or does someone just, does the state sort of have a master contract with someone?
I believe originally we go out to bid, and then they include these statistical updates within the.
Right.
In reality, most communities are with Vision, but we
Yeah.
do technically go through a bid
Sure.
process.
Yep.
All the other changes that look substantial in the year-over-year column are contractual with wages and then the related benefits and payroll taxes. You can see we have a placeholder in there for wellness coordinator stipend that didn't. So that is we requested 2,500 and recommended was 1,000. The wellness coordinator, that is part of our health insurance program through the trust. The wellness coordinator runs the Health Matters program, which offers a lot of, it engages employees in healthy activities and different.
Is that sort of like the
challenges.
walking
That's the
contest
walking
and-
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a great program. And it hasn't been something that was, there was any additional pay for running, and it does actually seem like it could use more, attention to be able to, get the word out more to employees, because it is a really great program.
So in other words, you could stipend an employee to coordinate that. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
I will say Mona has been doing
I
it.
know she has.
And she's not mentioning that.
You did a great job of running that, but you're not going to be running that anymore.
No, I really think it deserves more attention than I'm able to give it right now. It is really such a great program, and I just don't have the time to promote it the way it should be promoted.
And so the hope is that with a little bit of a stipend to attract some of the other employees to taking on that role, we may be able to continue it at the support Mona's given it, and maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Amy, you had talked about, I know there's a possibility backfilling a position, are you comfortable, that you, because I know the human resources person or whatever you're talking about, having some of that, are you comfortable with the funding that you have for this to any of those adjustments that you might have coming down? I don't want to see us cut ourselves short.
We may be short. And so let's talk about what is here in the page. The finance department, as it's currently presented, reflects a finance director at step one, essentially, plus the 3%, a deputy finance director at step one, and then that's all, right? So the constraint there is it is unlikely, or one of the challenges is hiring somebody with appropriate skills to be able to really hit the ground running. If we are able to find somebody who has those skills, then they are likely going to be coming in at a higher step because that's what's valuable. Then we would be short. Given that we have a smaller pool of applicants, if we are bringing somebody in who needs to do a lot more on-the-job training, then we may be okay from a funding perspective, but we're still going to have that constraint of workload because they're not able to take as much off of everyone's plate from day one. So that's the balance that we've got. So do we have enough capacity? I think it's a little thin, which is why, again, we've presented a status quo across those 3 interim positions, because I think in aggregate, we probably have enough, but the mix may not be quite on target as presented.
I just don't want to see I don't want to see us cut ourselves short on that. Because we talked, I wasn't, it was HR, we had talked about some of that. And I
And
just think,
going back to that HR consultant, that is above and beyond the functions that we currently perform. That is a need and a hole that we've identified now 3 years in a row and haven't filled. What you're seeing in the finance department for a budget are the functions that we currently perform today. And we know things are falling through the cracks there. From a
do we have
human,
something from an HR in the budget?
in the administration, there's a human resources consultant line that's proposed. Yeah.
Okay. So that will kind of dovetail over to that a little bit.
To follow up on this, I noticed that the number for the HR is $15,000. Does that seem like a number that could, that would get what you and Mona and others envision?
How much is it?
It's a good start.
15?
Yeah.
I think that's a start.
Consultant, yeah.
And so that is somebody who may be able to come in and do some very specific projects. We've already identified what our priority list would be in terms of helping establish some protocols and procedures, some standard form letters, some consulting type assistance, as opposed to some of the other things we've talked about, which are more staff level execution.
Yep.
That number just seems low, that's all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That,
Like I said, that's an ongoing need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the problem I have is I realize that, but when we don't fund it, it puts the stress on that office, on the other people with it. So I don't want to get to the point where we need to fund it now because something else broke, that's all.
I think you're hearing the same thing from Bill and me. This is not the time to be shy about this stuff. If we're gonna have to invest, tell us and let's make the investments.
So we'll see how we go.
And
through
yeah, I
this.
was gonna say, this is the first go
Yeah,
around. This
right.
is the one that gets
Yeah.
starred because
Right.
we need to
Yep.
make some movement as we go along.
Just one more note here would be the change in benefits. Looks like a large number
Yeah.
year over year, 22,926, and that's just attributed to a change in coverage. So we have, our employees have shifted. We've got this vacant position. We budgeted that for family benefits because that's what they'll be eligible for. And so basically that's the driver of that change. So overall, we've got a department change from it's going to be 18, little under 19% compared to last year's budgeted figure. And just a reminder that so much of these changes, this percent change you see year over year are driven by the wages and benefits and payroll taxes that are all related. I'll
Great.
move on to, okay, so this is the Human Services Department. That's gonna be the next page. Next here. Page 11 of the budget. And then that is page 6 of the narrative. This is the first time we're showing this department separately. Yeah, that's yeah,
Second time.
second year. Okay. We won't see any history. We don't have any history to go off of, but we have our year-to-date numbers. This department incorporated several lines that were spread throughout the budget in prior years, and that one of them would be the Senior Advisory Committee, which used to be under Community Support. So that's kind of been included in this department. And also there were a few lines also labeled Human Services that were over in the admin area in prior years. This budget was proposed or requested by our Human Services Director, Allison Carley, and I'd like to know if she wants to say anything.
Hi, Allison.
I do have a couple of handouts for you guys.
Allison, will you just identify yourself for when you get to the mic, please?
Allison Carly, Director of Human Services. And if there's not enough, I have.
We have enough for the table.
Sorry. So this is a brief overview of our key focus that I focus on a daily basis. Communication and resource navigation. So that's really information specialists working with the state and whatever programs that are available to us that come free, for lack of a better word. So hooking up with United Way, making sure that people are getting Medicare, Medicaid up and running, making sure every child on this island is insured, helping newly turned 65-year-olds navigate Medicare. And I rely basically on our state governing systems to help, or nonprofits to kind of help me through that. Also, work very closely with some of the charity-driven people on the island who say, you know what, this person could use some help with heating assistance. Can you help them out? So we've been successful with working with LI Heap on that. We do have a grant, and I think one note that I have to say is that on the state designated grant that we received from OHA, Office of Healthy Aging, 2,500 of that went towards senior transportation, but there's still 2,500 of that goes towards programming, peer-to-peer support groups, that kind of thing. We are still doing basic needs and food assistance. This island will never go hungry, I swear. And if they are, they're calling me and I'll know about it immediately. Senior services, this is probably the most proud area right now because I do feel like programming is up to par. Everyone is very happy with our coordinator of healthy aging. We are able to expand programming, reflect on self-isolation, get people out of the houses, get them exercising and working, that kind of thing. I think my kryptonite right now is the mental health and substance use support. I don't think I've dove deep enough in the substance abuse area, and I need to work on that. But again, I'm resourceful and scrappy. I'm trying to use as much money as I can from the state-funded areas instead of coming here first. Youth and family support. This is a big one for me. Currently, we have volunteers doing our English, Spanish learning classes.
Right.
We are working closely with the school through a nonprofit called Literacy Volunteers of South County. And I'm calling it the Backpack Program. We are trying to enlist some of our parents at the school to go and take these conversation classes at the library. Currently, those are being run by 3 different community members with all different ways of running them. My hope with some of this money from the budget is to create a structure from maybe some framework from a nonprofit like Dorcas International to help us build a structure so that something kind of lives long instead of drops off when a teacher leaves, or maybe contribute towards some certification for somebody that's willing to do the volunteer work. And that's kind of my thought. It's a big area that needs some love. And I was hoping that I could basically use a donation and in return get some framework to understand how these classes work. Maybe we could be a satellite. I'm not sure exactly, but I've definitely been investigating it, and I've earmarked, I think it's like $300 a month, which isn't part of this budget that's requested today.
So let me ask, because I used to be a volunteer with is it Literacy Volunteers of Washington County?
Yes.
Right? Is that the program that's still?
It's in existence today. We have a lovely community member who is the head of it. But in addition to that, we have 2 volunteer members of the community. One is just here for a bit, I don't think very long. And the other one is committed to consistent classes. I think my concern is consistency and curriculum. And I'm not an educator, but I would like to see some sort of framework to guide whoever is in that role so that we have uniform teaching at that level.
And
Right, because we did have books. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I volunteered as well. And my frustration I can recall was an inconsistent pipeline. So it would be, you would have a bunch of people for a couple of classes and then literally nobody.
And sometimes,
it would-
maybe we
it
don't
would-
show
it
up for
would
them.
Really, yeah, it would really, it was a lack of consistency both ways, I'm sure, but, so I think a structure really makes some sense.
And it's not a lot of money earmarked for it, but it
Yeah.
was definitely something that kind of drew attention to me. And not only that, I've seen some of the money that we've used to support programs on the mainland, such as domestic violence or sending money to Tri-County. And I'm going to say it, even though I shouldn't say it, I feel like they should be giving us money to support these efforts.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And after, especially more so Tri-County Community Action, Bridget and I are the legs of that
Yeah,
here.
sure.
And to give them 1,000, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it seems counterproductive to me.
Mhm.
And I've kind of voiced it with some people. I mean, I would like to take that money and invest in training for Bridget and I to have some sort of hybrid around how to deal with certain situations that we deal with daily. And it would be helpful to have that training. And I've inquired about it. So there is a line for training and education
Mhm.
around it.
On the ride share.
Yes.
Event 13, I know 2,500 was a grant. Can you tell me what is what's the protocol, a little bit what it is?
It's a good week to talk about this. So last year we got an opera grant for about $10,000. I think about $8,000 was earmarked for the actual transportation service, and the rest was earmarked for our coordinator, our senior coordinator. What that did was it opened up ridership eligibility. And
You saying this past summer or the summer?
I don't know when it came in, to be honest, because it was, yeah. And it opened it up to people with disabilities, caregivers. I know that the dentists who were coming over to the medical center were using it as transport from the airport to the medical center. And I do know that South County Home Health relied heavily on it to get their OT and their PT nurses out here to go on home visits.
Okay, can we stop a second? So this $13,000 allocated last year, was 10,000 of that from a grant, or is that all minus the 2,500, which we know was a grant? Is the remaining money, was that tax dollars or is that grant money that was spent on it besides the 2,500? I can't tell if the 10,000 is in here or the year before.
I believe it crossed years.
It did.
That's why.
It did.
So we'd have to look exactly what the split was in the dollars between the 2 fiscal years.
And so how does this work? I call a cab or I call you?
So it's been a little messy, and it's, as I say all the time, it's harder to take away after you've given it. So, well, not to you, but to me, it's been difficult walking in this role and having to clean it up. And what it was originally was the caretakers, the visits from South County Home Health, anyone over the age of 65, anyone. That included boat people, anyone visiting the island who heard about it.
Me.
You, yes, you. And the original reason for it, before the grant came in, was for people 65 years and older who needed rides. And not out of necessity, but out of necessity and not out of convenience. And what has happened as a result of opening it up with that APRA grant, and there was no real policing until I kind of really dug deep. There's rides to and from places 2 and 3 times a day by one individual. Yes. And I had to develop a real close relationship with the taxis to understand that. I also had to rifle through the way that the invoices came in to me and how the ride share was being handled. And then this week, we pulled the trigger because we spent the 2,500 from this year's grant last month, and it was done. And that was only in 2 months. So this week,
What's the protocol?
they call me now. They show me a Block Island license, and they have to be 65 years or older. That's really it. I mean, there
I
is,
can call you later tonight, so I wanna ride to the boat, I'm 65, I have my ID, and I
it,
can ride down to the boat.
it's not that easy.
But you have to say it to Allison.
Correct.
That's fine.
Good luck to you.
Good luck.
Well, apparently 13,000 people, $13,000 did have good luck.
It did before correct. She's absolutely right. I mean, I will shame you into, I had someone come in yesterday, as a matter of fact, wanting
There
a,
needs to be criteria, it can't be you shaming, there has to be criteria. for this.
understood.
That's what you just did this week.
I did that this week. I don't know if anyone saw it on the bulletin
I saw
board, but they have to reapply and re-enroll unless I know, the person who really needs it. But the bill, just for an example, since we've done this, it went from about $800 a month to $215. So it's come down significantly. And the other part of this story is that I feel sometimes the taxi cabs were signing people up that I didn't know. So I've reined that in as well. So it's something that I will build criteria. But I think just having a Block Island license alone is cleaning it up altogether.
I wanna
Over
find that-
65.
So, or a state ID, right?
As long as it's a Block Island resident,
Okay.
yes.
I agree with the concept.
Yep.
Someone needs to get the medical center, whatever it might be, but I'm having a hard time supporting this until I see some type of policy that has a check and balance. to
Yep.
it, You know?
You got it.
The idea is certainly that someone needs a transportation, what might be, but, this, like, I think you're saying it between the lines, it went off the rail.
It did.
Sounds like from both ends of it on there,
Mhm.
and I'd like to see some policy, something you have in place.
Sure.
From that end of it.
No problem. I started that wheel this week and I will tighten it up even further. But the bottom line is they have to re-enroll is what it's coming down
Everybody
to.
wants to help the people who we know we want to help.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
But I think essentially what we're hoping to do is provide transportation. If someone who is a senior and unable to drive for any reason needs to
Correct.
go to the post office, the bank, the lunch bunch, the grocery store, I mean, that's what we're looking to do.
Mhm.
Right,
Right.
I had heard there was someone took a cab, it was told me, and I don't know whether it's true, took a cab to visit another person. And there was a wait time charge while the cab driver waited while we're with that person.
So there is that aspect as well that I am policing in terms of saying things like, you get $80 an hour on Block Island in February, sign me up. So it's something that we need to address for sure. I've put, because I don't want to waste too much time, but I have put on your sheets my options to resolve it. Aside from making sure that we're policing it and monitoring it properly. There's a couple ideas I have, and I don't want to spark a conversation around it. We can talk about it later, but there are some ideas that I have.
One of those to Amy, and Amy, maybe you can report something to us.
Yeah, as we talked about, I think last week, this is up for future discussion at this table.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's the hot ticket. I mean, the last thing I want to talk about is housing advocacy. I've been attending the housing meetings. I have been deep diving as a result of getting the phone calls about I need housing or I'm losing my housing. I think there needs to be a head of housing. I don't want it to be me, but I do feel like somebody needs to collect some data for everybody and bring all parties to the table. I mean, I get calls from everything from homeowners associations to the regular resident at Ball Housing to you name it. And I'm in the middle of trying to audit our list so that I can provide you guys with decent data. Took me about 2 hours today to telemarket, Smile and Dial, and I'm getting a good response and everyone's responding the way I want them to. And so at the end of this, I want to have some data for you guys so that you guys can make an educated decision. And lastly, my professional development is really important to me. So any kind of training that I can get around this would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Allison. Appreciate all you do.
Any further questions on that?
I don't think so, Mona. Thank
Right.
you.
Moving forward to central dispatch, that's page 7 in the narrative and page 12 in the budget. So I think one of the biggest things to point out here, when we have a new line for the wages for the communications and alarm officer. Previously, this was basically done with volunteer hours for, I think, years. And this is the first year we are proposing to fund it. That is, it's funded for about 16 hours. Nope, that's the wrong one, sorry. Is it 20? 10 to 15 hours a week. That's what we have it funded for. Please.
Keep going.
No, I know. It's okay.
Go to it, Paul.
Are you? As Moan had pointed out, just the microphone. One of the bigger changes that we have in central dispatch this year was the addition of that communication and alarm officer. We've been talking about this for a number of years. We have one individual that has volunteered up there for years and years and
Yeah.
years. The old Digitize has been hit by lightning 3 times since 2011. They keep managing to put it back together. Howell has worked closely with Tom. They're getting the new fire alarm monitoring system up and running. They're working with the fire marshal, who is putting some stipulations on some of it, but it's getting really close. And it's time that we also, the volunteer fire department has funded this for a long time, some of these things, and it should come under the town's umbrella and the town's management.
Does this person report to you, this new person?
It's
I'm just,
Amy, myself, and Chris Hobie.
yeah.
So it will be a combination of the 3 of us, but more Amy and myself.
I think that's part of the initial deployment will be a report to the town manager in coordination with the fire chief and the police chief. But one of the things we are talking aggressively about is what's the long-term structure for that?
I mean, that's one of the things that I think we've talked about this, for a while. And I say this, as I can remember saying last year, with, I can't come up with a superlative that reflects my feelings about Hal and how good he's been about, sort of keeping this thing up and running. But one of the things that always worried me is, okay, well, what if something happens? It's the sort of, if a big part of this is sort of knowing more broadly how this whole thing works, which wires go where, which wires go where to which, really that's always been a concern of mine, the classic, what if I get hit by a beer truck, is that a big part of this is sort of
It's starting to institutionalize that knowledge, and the upside of this immediate fire alarm monitoring need is that we were forced to confront that.
Sure.
And through the process of the new deployment, there's been a lot more socializing of all of the technical aspects. Howell's obviously still the most critical component, but there's a lot more diversification now. So that will continue. And as capacity allows, we then go back to the communication side and start to do the same thing. extract as much of that information as we can so that it becomes more sustainable across the organization. So that's the direction we're headed. And there will come a point where having that be a staff position, even though it's limited in its hours, is important as we need to think about replacing Howell with somebody else.
Right.
So we're starting to move down that road.
Yeah. I just, I want to echo the importance of that chain of command as to who the person reports to. I think it's unhealthy for the employee and for the management not to have that. So I'm glad to see you're on top of it.
And as Amy had pointed out,
Nancy has a question here, too.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, in the past, we also had a representative from the alarm company itself available if there were any issues that came up. Does that come with this new system also?
We have technical assistance from them. It's a little bit of a different structure and much more of our interface is with Jensen Hughes, who's a third party that the State Fire Marshal has required that we work with. But again, in that process, it has produced a lot more documentation about the system and validated a lot of the in-house work that has already been done. It has been tedious at times to be told we have to work with them, and we have the benefit of all of that interaction that I think will serve us in the long run very well.
And is there a smooth connection between the communications and alarm between Howell and the Jensen group?
Yeah, I think they've worked, he and Tom have worked very closely with them. And the fire marshal has also had their stipulations of what they're required of what needs to be done inside the building itself. So amongst everyone, the cooperation has been actually pretty tremendous. And we're literally like steps from flipping the switch. So they,
Who
you
has
know,
to flip the switch?
Howell's going to flip the switch and Tom's going to make sure it goes up and not down. So we're that close. We're really that close to getting this done. And as I said, the digitize that was put in 2011, it's been hit by lightning 3 times.
Yeah.
And, that's just gotten to the point where the maintenance on it, getting somebody to travel down here from New Hampshire to do anything to it is next to impossible. Finding parts for it is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Is this lightning prone, whatever is going in now?
Simultaneously, in response, we also did some additional work at the tower and the antennas that could mitigate future lightning strikes. Until that happens, I don't want to promise anything.
Amy, will any of this be offset by the insurance?
What we're talking about today are operating costs.
Okay.
Yep. The things that we've talked about in the 25 budget, yes, that is still part of the insurance recovery. But what we're looking go forward is operating costs, and those are ours.
So it's not reflected in this budget, obviously, but like one of the things we had talked about, like Howell's done just a tremendous job over there and his work area is amazing. But Howell has said that he wants to have someone come in underneath him that he can show this to. So sort of the way that, the library is talking about succession planning, like his idea of succession planning, we don't have in the budget right now, but is that something we're looking at for next year, the year after? What are we looking at for that?
It can definitely be the year after. I would argue there's a little bit of space for that here in that we've identified a single line and we currently have one person appointed. If we are at the point where a transition is imminent, I think we can, use the same pool of funding and hours and start to divide it, especially if that becomes urgent. But that's sort of my thought, that if we needed to, you start to carve that out. The intention is to start with Howell, who has been doing the work, but if an assistant needed to be brought in, then we start to divide up that pot.
My other comment is completely unrelated to this page. I'm sorry, I didn't remember when we were talking about the school, but it kind of goes to this idea that like, it's not a good practice to have unpaid volunteers doing something, but so several years ago, the school committee voted to forego their pay because it was tight at the school. I don't think that's a good practice. And I think, just, and it doesn't cover them, insurance for the school committee, should something come up, a lawsuit, or, they should be getting their nominal. It was never great pay, by the way, I just want to say, but like, they should go back to their not great pay. Just as a good matter of practice, totally separate from what we're doing now. Sorry, I just remembered it because of Howell.
And under the line for communications, it says management of the head end equipment. Is that somebody else or is that?
No, so the communications line, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You go, you go.
So this is not going to be payment to people. This is going to be payment to vendors. So some of it is software licensing, some of it is equipment replacement. You can see from the current year, 20,400, we've increased it to 28,400, which is the documented request. I think there might be a little capacity in that line. And so we may be able to take it down, but since the town has just finally taken over responsibility for that system, we don't have a great handle yet on what the true costs are. But that is all real hard cost.
And the $43,000, is that enough?
That is overstated. So there are things in that year-to-date 43,513 that don't belong there.
No, okay.
And so we're working on cleaning that up.
We're trying to move through this budget, so I'm just going to mention just two other things. The dispatcher's wage line, of course, that's all contractual. We have 5 full-time dispatchers, but we've included in that a part-time, temporary as needed person at 16 hours a week, just at a step 1 for part-time help to help relieve, the employees when they're going to take, or when there's absences for vacation or sick time.
It also serves to train up somebody,
Sure.
one extra body,
Mm.
in the
Yep.
event of transition, which may come sooner rather than
Sure.
later.
Great idea.
So that's 16 hours, it's non-benefit,
Mhm.
right?
And that's a position we've had in the past. In years. And then we've got a $10,726 change in coverage, the benefits. That's just related to the change in coverage, which does leave an area of exposure. We have a couple people who are taking individual versus family benefits, which they're
Right.
eligible for. So if we were to change staffing, that would
Mhm.
change. And then just the under emergency services, that's just bringing in a full generator maintenance program for all the generators that we have across all the town buildings.
So that's, we contract with someone for basically 15 grand a year just to manage all of the generators. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Can I asterisk that, which is, that's the estimate, the actual work, if it exceeded our anticipated scope, could be higher.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if anyone's had to do generator work,
It's
it
helpful
is,
to know what that meant.
it's expensive and it's increased.
Yeah.
We think we have a handle on what the future work is, but if it can always be higher. So don't think you get everything we need
So we
for a
have
fixed
Just
15,000.
refreshing, we have a new one at the medical center.
We do.
We have a new one at the school,
Yes,
right?
kind of. Yeah.
Newish. Newish.
Mm.
Yeah.
We have one, what do we have up at the public safety area?
The town garage and the public safety complex have propane units that weren't under contract before
Yeah,
and are now in this new proposal.
gotcha.
So this 15,000 is the general maintenance contract for all of the, and
Yeah, for
it's
the,
coming under
for
the
the,
dispatch.
for the
but it
diesel
covers all
ones.
of them
for
For
the-
routine.
Yep.
Inspection and so forth, and obviously if there's anything above that, it would add to it. Very good.
I have to say the most, I mean, I feel like we spent a lot of time on generators that we're not up to snuff. I think this is a great idea. Thank you. Yeah. And money, not just time, but a lot of money.
Anything else to note or question about this budget? No? Okay. I'll move forward to police.
Mhm.
And that's going to be, sorry about that, on page 8 of the narrative, page 13 of the budget document.
Staffing and operational initiatives in the budget narrative. The continuation, our funding is essentially almost identical to last year outside of contractual raises through the IBPO. We have one person currently in the police academy, and Phil is doing outstanding. Every report I get every single week is better and better. Typically, the hardest part of the academy is the use of force test out, which was a week and a half ago, and he passed that with flying colors. So now it's on to all the fun things, learning how to drive fast and shoot. This is the best. The funnest part's the funnest part's the end. The hardest part's the beginning.
It could go viral, Paul.
So Phil, Phil's doing really well. He will be graduating in May. We have a second person that we're going to put into the academy in August.
Great.
And he will be graduating in December.
Great.
So this will change some of the, the dynamic of what we have right now is we have a bunch of non-union guys that are here full-time year-round. This will change it all to be, and not all of it, but for a better part of it, it will be union, which will be, I think, a little bit better for us. The accreditation and standards process, we're still working through that. There's still some money in the budget for that.
How challenging is that, Paul?
For the state accreditation, 323 standards.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not just all policy and procedure. Some of it is physical in nature. The police station itself, the requirements of some things that you need to have there that we don't currently have. But in the grand scheme of looking at a new public safety building for the fire department, moving some things around, and we're gonna get there eventually.
Right. Yep.
It's a really long-term project.
Yeah.
The Rhode Island Accreditation Commission is actually putting on a seminar on the 3rd and 4th in Newport, which I will be over there for
Great.
those 2 days. It's a lot, and there's a lot of departments that I have a friend of mine, and he's on Warwick PD. That's all he does.
Right. That's what I figured.
That's all he does. So I don't have that availability. I have people that are helping me with it, which has been fantastic. But when we get to the summertime, all of those things the brakes get put on that stuff. So
Sure.
Well,
but we're going to get there.
are there any modifications according to size? I mean, depending on, do you have to match what Providence and Warwick is doing in
And-
terms of this accreditation scheme?
In terms of organization scheme?
Yeah.
No, the standards mostly apply to how you're actually operating and the policies and procedures under which you're operating.
And they also include things like your lockup and your procedures and having the right equipment that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
so-
Everything from body cameras, we just went through and did that whole policy.
You're getting pulled, realistically, you're getting pulled in 8 directions. You don't have, from the other end of it. This year, only a couple $1,000s was spent to the 15. I know we budgeted 8,000 for next year. What do you anticipate that to be used for? To help write policies or?
To help write some of the policies. What some other departments do is they will actually hire someone from another department to come and help write their policies, and it's to pay some of those costs.
And whether we hit accreditation 6 months, a year, or 3 years from now, having these policies, there's a benefit to having these policies written. They go in place, and so there's an upside to it. So it isn't a matter of just trying to hit the accreditation. It's those things from that end of it. So that's probably money well spent from that end of it.
Exactly. And the things that I focused on right from the beginning are the things that are most critical. Your use of force, all of those kind of things, your pursuit policies and things of that nature.
So the other one I wanted to ask you on the state police, that 25,000, was that for the 4th of July weekend when they came down? Or is it additional?
How did that work out, Amy?
Yeah, I can pull it up. It was not just the 4th of July. It was also additional days in August.
Mhm. VJ Day.
So that it was a full summer, but it was multiple events. So I can look up the full detail. 25 was the amount in fiscal year 24. Those same weekends in fiscal year 25, summer of 24, was only 18,000, which is why we're recommending a $20,000 budget line, because I don't think we need to, I don't think we're going to hit that full amount that we previously expended.
And the other thing is, in the past, the state police would send down what they could send down and have available. I think, I'm not real keen on this. We're part of the state. They go to many towns throughout the year. We do have them on the weekends, whether it be the 4th of July parade in Bristol or whatever it might be. However, if we are paying, because it's not just the salary, it's the car, it's an administration fee, there's a number of things there. I think that, I would hope that you're involved on meeting what you think are the needs from that end of it, and not just what they send down from the other.
Oh, no, absolutely. And part of it, we did, I got the burn grant last year, and that's what we used to pay the overtime. That's offset some of what it cost. I think it offset 3/4 of the cost for the VJ Day weekend. And it is based upon what we've had in the past and what we actually need. And it's not, as you said, it's not what they want to send, it's what we actually need and what we ask for. Because they are also shorthanded, and they sometimes have a difficult time filling that detail for those days. And Sergeant Acting Lieutenant Parati was very instrumental last year in pulling some of his guys. Parati, he's in charge of the truck division. He pulled some of his guys to help during the VJ Day weekend because they were having trouble finding guys to do it. So it's what we request.
And just one more question under the accreditation. It used to be the trust was always pushing for accreditation.
Yes.
Do they provide any grants or funding to assist communities?
They do not. I believe they did for a few years, but
Yeah.
not currently. And that's actually what I was just pulling up. I believe the 2250 in the year-to-date column is a fixed amount that we pay to the State Accreditation Commission. So sort of a membership fee that we're obligated to participate in.
It does affect your rates though, doesn't it? I
It-
mean,
It,
if you
it,
accredit a small.
if we
amount.
were not trying and working towards it,
Right.
we would have a pretty serious set of conversations with the trust
With the
about our
trust, yeah.
coverage. The fact that we are moving towards accreditation, as the chief said, just having those policies in place goes a long way. So.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Paul, thank you.
You're
Can I
welcome.
just, Millie, ask you a question? Do we have to be out of here at 5?
Five?
Yeah, there's another meeting.
All right.
Tail wagging the dog.
They don't make the boat.
Moving to the Public Works,
Oh, good.
Thanks, Chad. Right in my grasp.
He's moving.
yeah, all right.
What's that in?
Moving into Public Works Department. Page 8 in the narrative and 14 in the budget. Spans 2 pages in the budget document.
Do we want to hold off on Public Works
Wait for Mike.
Since
Wait
we're
for-
probably not going to get through everyone today, we can wait for Mike to be here.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. On to Harvard we go. Page
Amy, do you have a
94.
boat to catch?
I
You-
think there's a 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Not 5.
Not 5.
All right, Harbor's Department, page 9 in the narrative and page 16 in the budget document. Welcome, Kate.
I pulled some muscles in my knee, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna sit right here.
I think that's very disrespectful.
Sympathy is limited.
I know, it's very limited.
Go ahead, Kate.
I think the only significant change is the increase in my staff. That wage line item. I have 22 returning staff this year. About 20 of them, this will be their third or fourth summer at least with me. So keeping them here and giving them a working wage for the responsibility that we give, I think is extremely important. That's the main item that I wanted to set. That's about it. Unless Mona, you see something else.
Hey, can you just mention what the grant matches?
Yep, the CVA, that's the Clean Vessel Grant. That's how we run our pump out program. And they've actually begun 2 grants. One's for a smaller amount, which is more maintenance. And then they are offering a larger, which I could potentially get a brand new boat, a new motor, a peristaltic pump or something like that. But the smaller one is for basic
And
maintenance,
who's that through?
a DEM.
And you increase the mooring fees and a few other things to sort of offset.
We increased the town mooring fees and the private rentals by $10 and 50 cents in Old Harbor.
So you have $2,000 in the abandoned boat disposal line, but we changed the policy, right? So that people have to have insurance. Do
I
you think
did.
that'll change that line eventually or?
I tried to get rid of it. There is a program with the state that I can apply for abandoned vessel reimbursement. An abandoned vessel out here to remove it from the waters, depending on the size, is anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000. I don't want to make that a large line item. There are 2 boats now that are going to get pulled that have insurance. There is one that I'm going to have to get rid of and apply for the reimbursement.
Just curious, does the insurance pay for the disposal?
Yes.
It does.
Yes, it
Okay,
does.
so.
And
like-
I don't even have to deal with it. The salvage provider that we have deals with all the insurance company. They deal with it themselves. I'm just sort of the go-between between the owner of the boat and the salvage.
Right. So you think ultimately the change in policy is going to work to our advantage in this line?
I'm trying to make it
Yeah,
so.
that's great.
Any other questions for Kate? Kate, thank you for the work you do. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Okay, moving forward to building official, it's gonna be the page 9 in the narrative, page 17 in the budget document. So contractually, we use 4-Leaf as the building official. So we felt comfortable reducing that per the terms of the contract, and then also some historical averages and current year projections. Wage increases are contractual. And other than that, I don't see anything that needs to be noted. If anyone has any questions.
Just a quick one. I mean, last year, it seems like there was a request for more time for the building official, from some of the builders, and yet, you know, it looks like we haven't spent much of anything in that line item this year.
There is a delay in the billing
Oh.
from Four Leaf, so you're not seeing, what you're seeing is not through February activity necessarily. But the projection of 86,000 is consistent with our current year expense. It's consistent with last year's expense. And they continue to feel that they are meeting the needs and that there is no additional time to be giving and therefore billing for. At the same time, in the long-term planning conversation, you know, we have talked about this is working for now, and there's not an expectation that the relationship will change. And the town really needs to be thinking about what that next step looks like.
Yeah.
And so my understanding is that a building inspector, building official academy may be beginning as well. I think Jen heard that at a recent meeting, a recent conference. And so as we get more information about that and other training opportunities, how can we entice somebody local to build up those certifications and be prepared for the future? So, you know, yes, we're talking about the current year budget, but it's really with an eye to what do we need to be doing to set up the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's an excellent idea. We're doing it with some of our own town offices here also. And I think we really got to focus on pushing forward with that. I think so it's clear for everyone. So Four Leaf does the building permits and so forth. Do they do, I know he'll come out and he inspects what he has. Is he doing so much of the enforcement or is he of non-permitted things? So in other words, because I think there's you know, the area comes down to who actually does the enforcement. And the thing is, I understand that if there's a builder permit, building inspector will come to my site and either I meet the code for how it was wired and so forth. But if the building next door has, you know, a shed going up in the back, whatever, that's not my understanding. That's really not what he's there to do. He's there to follow through on the building permit. So I don't know if that's true, but I think the issue of the enforcement and do we have the funding or how does it work?
I think as much as the funding is, do we have the mechanism? Meaning,
Right.
Do we have somebody driving around and looking for unpermitted work? I think is the question you're asking,
Yeah, or-
because our inspector is going to come inspect your requested work. That's something I think that takes a bigger conversation and I'm not prepared to have today,
Sure.
but we can talk about that going forward.
Yeah, and my thing isn't to have that conversation today, but I think that we should think about if it's an issue of, like I said, us being to get someone to do it or the funding, I think we should isolate out which it is and we can talk about that. Because I think there's a misconnect perceptually, if nothing else.
Terrific. Thank you.
All right, we're moving to the Recreation Department, page 10 of the narrative, 18 in the budget document. Our rec director, Dave Sniffen, will be speaking, and I just wanted to quickly touch on a couple of the major things, take some of that explanation off his plate, because basically there's a couple of the lines in here that we've seen expenses growing year after year, and we haven't quite captured them in the budgetary figure. So a lot of these, for instance, Fred Benson beach expenses would be one of them. So really that $30,800 change from last year's budget is just based on what we've seen with the historical averages, projected figures for the upcoming year. And it just covers the rising costs of general maintenance and utilities at that building. Also, something to note is that, you know, the beach house is now open longer throughout the year and also longer in hours. So that's going to add to those expenses. Heinz Field maintenance, the same thing. We're kind of catching up with where we should be to capture the increasing costs of the maintenance there. We have some mowing contracts that the cost of it has increased compared to years prior. As well as Ball O'Brien, same situation. So all those were adjusted for just looking at actuals and just trying to get closer to where we should be to budget accurately for them. And let's see, other than that, I'm gonna let Dave take the rest of it.
Can I just ask on the training and travel line? It said requested $575 and recommended $5,000
So that's where we merged our training and travel lines.
together.
Mhm,
Oh,
yeah.
gotcha.
If
the
you put those
45
together, the
yeah.
overall, yeah, if you put it
Got it.
together, the overall change is actually a reduction of 1.5%.
Yep, thank you.
Dave.
Hi. One of the main things I did want to talk about was one of the requests I have is for the increase in an additional camp counselor funding of about $5,000, which would allow us to increase our enrollment in the camp. And in doing so, we'd be able to increase the revenue by about $10,000. So spend $5,000 for $10,000 seems like a good idea for me to help increase revenue. Other than that, a lot of it, again, is what Mona said, catching up with the maintenance contracts. Ball O'Brien bathrooms, we continue to leave open a lot longer. We've initially left them open through September, and now it's actually gone through November. Into November, the bathrooms are open. Fred Benson Town Beach is open until 8:30 at night and through till October. So we're increasing the amount of services that are available, but that does cost money for cleaning and things of those nature. So anybody else have any questions about anything else?
Even on the Heinz Field, I think it might be the infield that you're redoing, but it's a $10,000 increase on the maintenance. It was 35,000 budgeted. It's going to 47.5.
A lot of that is an increase in mower costs. We added the mowing into that to catch up to what the costs had been in the last few years. There is going to be an infield. That's actually further down the line. We're going to be adding infield mix and things like that to get it up to playable, the surfaces. But I think what you're referring to is the increase in adding to the mowing costs and things like that, the increases over the course.
It was,
So I
your
think
actual cost was 37, right? And it's going to 47.
our actual cost year to date, so is 37.
I
So
apologize.
I think what we're saying is that budget number of
It's
35.5
too low.
is not appropriate if you look
Right.
at the
It's gone
last
up,
three
like-
actual years.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so that's been a budgeting error that we need to fix.
Because some of this is contractual, because I saw we had the other. end
Yes.
of it,
Yep.
Which is higher than that 35, so.
Right.
Thank you
Anything
for
else?
teaching my granddaughter to dribble and shoot a
You're doing a great job. Too.
That is about the cutest thing going.
Moving along, we're going to, didn't skip anyone, did I? GIS, page 11 on narrative, page 20 in the budget document. Really, the major component to just point out here is the change in the license and maintenance contracts. And, one second, sorry. So that's really based on the historic averages as well as projected numbers for this year end of software program costs required to meet either regulatory demands of the citizens, requests and also promote department efficiency are driving this really. We're just moving to more technology. And with that becomes these are mainly subscriptions to different softwares or program fees across all the departments.
On the equipment replacement, are you expecting, because you have the 15,000 budgeted and I think you've only spent like 300, are there some anticipated things coming on that or?
There's actually a backlog. I was just pulling up the number of encumbrances from prior year technology that we've been unwinding, and therefore we haven't touched the current year expense. 15,000 is what we've always historically carried for equipment replacement. We've just been able to dip into that other funding in the current year.
Could you remind me which line item is Allison Ring? Is it GIS?
Yeah, she's going to be line 5,500
And
consultant GIS.
5,400 is Freedom Tech?
5,400 is Freedom Tech and other technology consultants.
Okay.
Yeah. That top line's probably a touch low from an ongoing basis.
Which one?
The top line, 5,400 consultant technology. But again, because we have some prior year dollars available, we're going to use those. But it's important to know when you think about future budgeting years that will have to start to increase.
Any further questions there for anyone?
So excuse me, Mona. So we have Allison Ring doing GIS, then we have the contracted planner who's doing the planning board. Just clarify this.
And we're working on this.
I'm going to pretend that I'm asking you for the community. But I'm really asking 'cause I don't remember.
It's a great question because we are in transition in those roles.
Yes.
So Allison Ring continues to serve in our GIS capacity. And we have Libra planners, the face of whom is mostly Peter, as the town's planner. There are legacy projects that Allison continues to work on and shepherd through, particularly related to sea level rise, Horn Neck Road, and that grant program.
Yep.
Some housing grant programs, and a few other grant administration type roles that she is seeing through. So you will see, if you ran a detail, some Allison Ring charges under the planner line as she's working on those legacy projects.
Right.
I also do think that at the end of the day, the actuals under this GIS line will be lower, but this is what her current contract reflects.
Right.
So
Is it a maximum of?
it is.
Yeah.
Um,
I just would, I'm a broken record on this, but at some point, we have to have a conversation about what that planning function looks like. I think, I know they're very, very difficult to fill. The reason there are consulting firms doing this is that it's a, much more efficient and probably lucrative way to get this done. But I do something that feels like we should have someone who's here.
And so that will come, I don't want to say to a head, but we'll have this conversation again in short order, in that both Allison's contract and Libra Planner's contract run through June 30th. So we'll need to take some action in the short term. We'll also be talking about how we want to staff the comprehensive plan updates. That will probably be a conversation we have in May also.
Yeah.
And in sort of that same vein of the building inspector and building official, the state of Rhode Island, who has acknowledged the challenge of community planners in Rhode Island, is doing their best to try to provide additional training with a program that kicks off, I think, in the fall. It's not a full planner, but an accreditation or a credit program.
Great.
So there will be a lot to talk
Thank you.
about, but
Sorry to
we
be a
are
broken record on that.
not alone in that challenge.
Yeah.
Moving forward. Boards and commissions. Page 11 in the narrative and page 21 in the budget document. First, just want to point out the new line that we have, a proposed line we have for an urban planner for downtown. This was at the request of the Old Harbor Task Force. they requested 40,000. We didn't, we weren't able to find the funding for it at this point. Feel comfortable putting it into the budget. Because that's up to the discretion of the council and the public. So that's one new line there. And another notable item would be the, as far as wages clerk, so all the wages, the benefits here, they're union driven, see if I see anyone, and taxes, so those are gonna increase with the contract. One addition is we did add an additional 10 hours a week, some additional clerk hours to help alleviate the pressure of the some of the pressure there in the zoning and land use world, particularly surrounding the short-term rentals.
So I had a question on that because it seems to me that the biggest chunk of time was spent this year with the GIS, not GIS, with your septic system connection for the short-term rental. I'm more concerned about the changes in zoning and planning and who's doing what going forward. That Jen, you're going to need some more assistance just in general, not for the short-term rentals, but.
And so she can weigh in if she wants, but I think it is important to acknowledge there's a disconnect between the requested and the recommended column. The full request was for a 20-hour position to be added to land use with a more general set of functions. What is recommended, although I won't say it's not a hard recommendation, but what's proposed for funding is just that 10 hours focused on short-term rental, not just renewals at this point, but also the enforcement side. The department at this point has almost no capacity to do the next step, which is the enforcement of the short-term rental program. So if there is an appetite or an acknowledgement for the broader scale of land use needs, I think the department would be more than willing to accept additional staffing. That was certainly their request. But we've narrowed the recommendation here.
Great, let's put it in the hopper, because Nancy and I agree on those type of things.
Yeah,
Th-
I mean, I'm more concerned with the functioning next year of the department than the enforcement of the short-term rental. I mean, that just started, so,
I don't disagree. And one of the things we've already heard today and have heard other places is enforcement. And so there was an intention to take this new program, even though it's the newest, and do a better job at the enforcement side. So that was just an element of that. But again, I think the department could always use additional capacity given the transitions that have happened in the legislation. And so if there's an appetite for that, we can build it back in.
To Nancy's point, we have, we all, Tristan and Molly and I think voted on 15 of these things, last year before you guys were elected, all of which, or many of which, had as their fundamental conclusion, your land use officer now does these things. Instead of planning, instead of zoning, it sort of meshes with, my other discussion around planning. Like at some point, we're being forced to make that investment, I think. That's, I just think as a practical matter, we're going to end up, worst case, we're going to end up dropping the ball on something where we're supposed to have an infrastructure that enables a certain thing to happen, and we're going to get sued. I worry about that.
well, I'm not worried so much about the lawsuits. It's just, the general stress when you look at how things
Yeah.
are changing.
Yeah.
And we've got, basically one individual.
Well, we did in the last budget, we did increase the assistance hours by 10 hours a week. Correct. Right, in last year's budget. So we're moving in the right direction. We just maybe have to keep moving.
We probably should have hired additional staffing for short-term rental. I know Newport hired 2.5
Yeah.
new staff members for 500 short-term rentals. We should have done that. We should have at least hired a full-time person, in my opinion, because it wiped us out for 3 months. Sorry. And then all of the new changes for all the state changes, enforcement, yeah, I would say I could have easily justified 3 new staff members, but
And
wanted to be realistic.
right, and you're not wrong. I talked to Newport quite a bit during that process, and in addition to having more staff, and I think they did just hire one new person. So previously they were doing it with 1.5 people, but their fees, their
Are 800.
fines are like
Yeah. I think the
crazy high, where
registration
our
fees-
fines are extraordinarily low.
Mhm.
So that is another angle we could work on to help with this, right?
I think overall, the whole process went pretty smoothly. We have-
It was incredibly well done. And one of the things that I
Thank you.
love about it is data we didn't have that we now have.
We have a lot of, we have, a lot.
Yeah.
We do. I think it's important.
But just to acknowledge, you guys did an extraordinary amount of
Yes.
work, all of
Yeah.
you. I mean, it was the clerk's office and your office, and I know
That
What's
was
that?
all, it was all land use, pretty much.
It was
other
all-
than
it was all
fielding
you.
questions
Okay.
that came in,
And,
and Wayne Pinkham from
Mhm.
wastewater, he had.
right.
And building.
And I know Amy's fielded a lot of very difficult questions
Yes.
from people. So really
Thank you.
terrific.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
long winter.
Yeah, I'll try and make next year easier
That's
all around.
The only other thing I would add here with this boards and commissions department would be regarding the North Light and their request. So they requested 20,000 for wages. That's for 2 docents to work about 8 hours a day, 5 days a week from July 1st to Labor Day. And then on the weekends until Columbus Day, total of 59 days. And then they also requested 25,000 for maintenance, and that's general maintenance, interior painting, cleaning, trimming, fuel for generator, and some repairs to the brick apron.
I think it's great to get that North Light back open and have someone down there. Are there fees that come in from that?
Yes.
We were open last year, John Hackett did it, but the issue we have is staffing.
Sure.
You know, since COVID, we haven't had much luck. Even at $20 an hour, we had no break, so. I think the long-term goal would be to finish the second floor, or we'd have, now you're only gonna get 2 bedrooms and, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a bathroom.
Hey,
And the third floor
hey,
is-
Robbie, can you just come up, please?
Okay. So what we're looking at now is, if we get staffed and open, we're hoping to be open this year. We just finished painting the lantern, and if I could show you some pictures, Millie.
Oh. I'm not giving him mine.
We'll be on a signal lab.
Just got a text.
That was really funny.
Nick's probably there saying what's going on.
Now, before I use it, maybe go back and click on file. In other words, it doesn't let me advance it.
No. Let's end it here. Huh? Why don't we end it here? And if Amy wants to make, is it 6 o'clock? Yeah, she wants to make it 6.
Well, anyway, this is the lantern. We went 14 years from when the tower restoration was completed. Yes. Now, this is the west side. As you can see, it's the worst side. We get the salt laden ocean air. The plate, the bottom plate there above the cornice is a steel replacement piece. You can keep going if you can. You can just scroll right through them if you can. It's a pain in the ass. As you can see, this is the east side. The east side isn't as bad.
On the summer, you get that southwesterly every day.
Well, it's mainly northwest in the winter that we get,
Yeah.
the lantern gets covered with salt. One of the issues we had was when we did the construction project, it dragged on for 25 months. And we actually had to let the contractor go. And we hired Keith from Abcor, so he's familiar. If you look at, there's top and bottom stops that are steel, and steel is not as durable as the cast iron. So when we did this painting, we also upgraded and went to stainless stops. So hopefully this won't be an issue in the future.
Keep going?
Yeah,
Are we gonna go sit them all?
yeah, I would go to 20. Should have used my computer. Yeah, it won't go. All right, let it play the video. Now, this is how bad the rust jacking was. This is a steel replacement plate. And you can see he's using a chip the rust off. And when it gets this bad, it's not good because the rest of the plates are cast iron. And when this becomes rust out from iron side, you'll actually crack the cast plates.
Oh,
Okay.
sure looks good now.
Yeah. All right. When the lantern was installed and they put the roof on, there was a large, like a shotgun going off. And this crack didn't show up for over 2 years. So essentially what happened was they over tightened the bolts and they filled the joints that should have been filled with a flexible sealant with Bondo. And that's what put tension in the roof. Now, this is where the top and bottom stops removed and the glass was rebedded in sealant and
Gosh.
these are the new stainless stops. And while he had the staging up, I reworked the lantern flashing. Yeah. It's kind of like a story, so I. So this is where the counter flashing installed. You can go down 3 or 4. These are shots from my drone of it finished.
Wow.
So what we ended up doing was we cleaned out the Bondo that was in between the plates and put in a flexible sealant. And all the glass got rebedded. So we solved a lot of the issues we had. It's just, we can't go another 14 years.
Sure.
Um,
That's just extraordinary.
And some of the other work, they redid the flashing on the chimney. And Mark redid the bulkhead door and we had it mounted. So all told, it was 88,000 or something. And this is the top looking down. That's good mill. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Nice job, Robbie.
It's incredible. Yeah, Mark too, right?
So, one of the things I'm gonna recommend, sorry,
Sorry.
I'm gonna recommend that the count, or either the town manager, facilities manager, and the commission get together, because I'm getting ready to resign here shortly. And we need to have a better definition of, when I started, there was no facilities manager. So Gil and I picked up the ball and ran with it, and now it's time to hand off.
Sure.
So that's something the commission will work with the manager. And I think you need to look at the description for North Lake Commission, because that's from the 70s.
Sure.
I told Mark I would stay on, and with this money from Orsted, I'm gonna go through, since I know the light better than anyone, I'll describe the work that I think needs to be done and make recommendations, and then they can do what they want with it. As it is now, we got a little generator that's running 16 to 20 hours a week, every week. And I recommended that we put in a small solar system to at least get us another 5 years. And at that time, the system should be replaced and upgraded. The current,
Have you talked to Solar Initiative about that?
talked with who?
Have you talked to the Solar Initiative about that? You have time?
Not yeah, I mean, when we get ready to replace it, yeah,
Because it strikes me as something that they would be
yeah.
interested in.
See, the system we have, is 30 something years old, and it served us well.
Sure.
But I think we're gonna need an upgrade, and with a 3 or 4 kilowatt system, a DC system, that would provide most of the power. It's unfortunate. When I put the wind turbine up, it was good for a couple of years, and then as the dunes encroached on the tower, I kept having problems with it. And fortunately, we have a good exposure for solar. Trying to think if there's anything else. But I know the push is on now. We want to get the building cleaned up and opened. And for the counselors that haven't been out, I'll be going out pretty regularly here. If you want to go out. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, and it's probably my fault, is we've had webcams out there for almost 10 years now. And we have a website and we're live streaming. So I need to get it on the town webpage.
Oh, that's a great.
We started live streaming last year from the camera that faces the point.
Oh, cool.
And we also allowed Mystic Aquarium and Bimmy to put a camera a seal cam on the lantern, and I just got some of the first pictures of it from it.
But that's cool. That's great.
Yeah, it's the resolution. I mean, you're 1,700 feet from the point, but they could count the number of seals, but they're not going to be able to see tags.
Right.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I know we have a lot of new members on the commission, and so hopefully, with a change in direction and being specific as to who, one of the recommendations I was going to make would be Tom would take over the exterior and the commission could take control of the interior. And because I know that's always been on the back burner, beefing up the exhibit and
Well, I think you hit it on the head, Rob. The getting the money from Orsted, I think, is a great catalyst for this kind of conversation. So we'll.
Well, one thing I think you should consider is, as far as planning, we're about 75% there. So I don't think and it's kind of limited because it's so small. In the beginning, we all had grandiose ideas. We're going to rent this and that, but essentially you took up all the living space on the first floor with the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one thing I have a list of all the little things that I think you should know about, but one of them was we have a zoning issue because when it was transferred to the town it was a lighthouse with a dwelling, but now it's a museum. So that's something that's something we're going to have to straighten out, how we do it, whether you make a special zone for the lighthouses but anyway, we were almost finished with construction and someone actually thought about it. And I said, well, don't tell
Yes,
me.
exactly. Exactly. Well, Amy, Tom, just tell us if we need to agenda this here. Happy to do that,
Yeah, our next step in terms of council action is that draft funding agreement from Orsted.
Great.
So.
Terrific.
Is that, are they ever gonna be talked about, or? 'Cause I'm not familiar with that agreement.
At all. Yeah.
How about we talk about that in the context of capital?
If we're gonna do that under capital, which will probably be tomorrow,
I think
because
so,
I don't
yeah.
think we're gonna get to that. Can we get copies of that or get
It's
some
about
background?
400 pages. I can send links around,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Hello, Judy.
Hello, Judy Gray, 1192 Sands Pond Road, and Chair of the Block Island Coastal Resilience Committee. And so my first order of business is to tell you that line number 7500 should probably read Coastal Resilience instead of Sea Level Rise, since we changed our names this year. I'm very grateful that to continue to be in the budget at $2,000. But of course, our real effort is to get a coastal resilience officer. So I was tickled pink to see that the town had included a coastal resilience planning person in the Orsted agreement. So I'll be very interested to participate as much as you want or to hear what the results are. But I'm here and can provide information to that conversation if you'd like. I like the idea of it being a catalyst for conversation. That was a good quote, Keith. I think that the climate resilience officer, we're just going to keep pushing on that. I think it's really important for the town. I had heard in a discussion, maybe it was last year, why do we need a coastal resilience officer when we have this committee? And the answer is that we're advisory. So while we love all the people we work with, Allison in particular, Allison Ring, we don't create and execute budgets. We don't solicit and manage grants. We just bring people in, try and get them interested, but it's not we don't do any of the town functions of actually administering the results. So right now we have Allison Ring administering the Corn Neck Road grant, and she's doing a fantastic job, by the way, really on top of it, and I'm very grateful to her. Also, grateful to the land use. I think what, really want to stand up and support an increasing investment in the land use staffing. I think that's really important. It's going to be important on, even to our committee. Oh, the other thing I'd like to say is Coastal Resilience Officer, I just want you to keep in mind that it doesn't need to be full-time and it doesn't need to be on Block Island. So many of the meetings that I can't attend are on the mainland. I mean, most of the action is on the mainland around coastal resilience. And finally, not related to coastal resilience at all, but a big plug for Allison Carly and the senior committee. Allison was instrumental in helping me as a caregiver get my mother transitioned to a nursing home. It was a very emotional and difficult decision for us. She really helped me walk through that process. So I'm very grateful to them and to the senior committee for all that they do to support me and all the other seniors on the island. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, is that in the, so there's a Cornick Road grant. There's a couple of grants we got, and they're not reflected. Grants aren't reflected in the budget.
You look at me as.
Yeah. At the ends, I was averaging, obviously.
They are not.
Okay, that's fine. I was looking for them and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, you'll find year-to-date information in the monthly financials that Mona produces. But because we have the authority under the warrant to spend those grant monies as received, they are not part of the budget process.
Understood. And I understand the difference between contracts and grants. Yeah, it's critical. One last thought about this is the website. Yes, I know that you were going to ping me on that, Socia, so thank you. The TNC Coastal Resilience or Climate Resilience person last year added a bunch of sea level rise and coastal resilience related information to the Nature Conservancy site. And the company that we've hired for the Cornick Road project, GZA, is creating a website around their activities. But at some point, I need to find somebody who can help me populate the town website, and it ain't me. So I really need somebody to help me pull, or help the committee pull the right information into the website of the town. Oh, Millie will, well, no, not me, help us. Okay, thank you. Because, yeah, it's mostly I've, had trouble with that. So thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Keith,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah.
To interrupt your thought. It seems pretty clear to me that we need a review of sunrise wind mitigation in general. And so rather than just tackling it in capital tomorrow, I'd love to agenda it as a separate item for next Wednesday so that we can talk about it as a standalone. I can give the council and the public some history on where we've gotten to. That agreement was executed about a year ago between Sunrise and BOEM, and what those mitigation impacts are and what our next steps are as a town.
Great.
I
Terrific.
think that might be helpful.
Good.
So next Wednesday, we'll add that to the agenda. Yeah.
Good. Mona, can we do revenue tomorrow?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. I have a motion to adjourn.
But before we adjourn, can I I just want to thank Mona for doing all this work and thank everybody for coming because we had a lot of people here, and Amy for doing all the work.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
there's a lot of work that went into this.
Yes,
So appreciate you
that's for
guys. Thank
sure.
you.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned. So.
We try. We try.
Two parts of this.